Tuesdays are supposed to be invisible. You clock in, you clock out, you keep your head down, and nobody bleeds. That's what I was counting on when I rolled my mower out of the garage that afternoon, wrestling an engine that sounded like it had swallowed a fork. The sun was high, my daughter's voice was bright, and then silence. Like someone hit a switch and shut the day off. Before we go any further, hit the comments and tell me exactly where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Because what you're about to see isn't a story. It's a warning shot to anyone who's ever been told people like you don't belong. I looked up the gravel lane and saw my 8-year-old June crumpled on the stones, 4 varsity jackets closing in like a wall. One boy, bigger than the rest, jaw set like the world owed him, choked up on a metal bat and drove it into the gravel an inch from her head so hard the pebbles jumped. I ran, but my wife, Serena Blake, was already moving the way trained people move. No wasted motion, no panic, just a straight line aimed at the threat. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look angry. She walked straight through those boys as if she'd been invited and said flat and cold, "Step away from my kid. Drop the bat." That bat hung in the air between them like a decision. The big one was Chase Whitfield. His last name travels faster than the school bus in our neighborhood because his mother, HOA Karen, runs the HOA, the PTA, and, depending on who you ask, your entire life. Chase tried to stare her down. His friends shifted behind him, tough until a grown woman treated them like a problem that could be solved. Serena didn't blink. "Drop it," she said again. And he did, not out of conscience, but because he finally saw who he was talking to. By the time I reached them, June's lip was trembling, and there was a raw raspberry across her cheek. Serena knelt, hands moving gentle and sure, checking pupils, checking the back of June's head, making a cocoon with her body. I looked up at Chase and his friends and thought, "You're just boys, but you're playing a man's kind of stupid." That's when a white luxury SUV slid to a stop like it owned the street. HOA Karen, hair flawless, sunglasses sharp enough to cut, stepped out. She took in the scene like a hostess catching someone double-dipping the hummus. "Chase, sweetheart, what on earth is this?" she purred. He mumbled about an accident, about June tripping. HOA Karen's smile tightened. She'd already chosen her version of the truth. Her eyes flicked from the bat to Serena and glided right past reality. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding. Boys will be boys." Serena rose slowly, her voice still calm. "Your boy was standing over my daughter with a bat after he and his friends knocked her down." "I think you're mistaken," HOA Karen replied, in that patient, poisoned way. "Chase wouldn't do such a thing. She probably tripped. Gravel is so unforgiving." I opened my mouth, then shut it. I knew that face. I'd seen it at HOA meetings when some poor neighbor dared to ask why an emergency assessment just happened to match the cost of a new stone patio at HOA Karen's house. That's the face of someone for whom rules are furniture. You arrange them to match your couch. We took June home. Serena cleaned the scrapes, let June pick a unicorn bandage, and made space for tears that came in hiccups. June told us what happened. She'd been walking past them humming a movie song. They were ghost-swinging bats across the path. Chase stepped in front of her and told her the road was for varsity, not toddlers. He nudged her with the bat. "A nothing nudge if you're a big kid on pavement. A lot of something if you're an 8-year-old on loose gravel." She went down. He planted the bat like a flag inches from her head. One of the other boys flicked pebbles at her face. They were laughing when Serena arrived. Swallowing that story felt like swallowing glass. Hope is not a plan. This wasn't going to be a misunderstanding to be smoothed over at the principal's office. This was a system flexing its power through a spoiled kid with a bat. And what Chase didn't know, what HOA Karen didn't know, was that the woman who had just told him to drop it wasn't just my wife. She was a decorated Army medic, a compliance strategist with a federal contact list, and she had been quietly building a record of HOA Karen's abuses for months. They thought they'd humiliated an outsider. In reality, they had just triggered the first move of a much larger operation. That's the silent authority move. No shouting. No threats. Just a mother with steel in her spine staring down a system that had gotten too comfortable. And as I looked at June's scraped face, I felt a clean, cold focus settle over both of us. This wasn't just about our kid. This was about every neighbor who had been fined for a flag, every veteran forced to take down a ramp, every child told varsity only. We were done playing by their script. From that day forward, the story would be written in our words. And the next time HOA Karen saw my wife, it wouldn't be at the edge of a gravel lane. It would be under lights, on record, with the whole neighborhood watching. People thought we'd be rattled, that we'd back down after the gravel, after the bat, after the SUV. They didn't understand who they were looking at. Serena Blake was never the kind of woman who collapses when someone in a blazer raises their voice. Before she was my wife, she was Staff Sergeant Serena Blake, Army combat medic, 38 months in zones where the only rule was, make it out alive. She learned to stop bleeding with her hands, to remember every serial number on every crate, to log and tag everything, because in chaos, the paper trail is life. And then she came home, earned a degree in regulatory compliance, and made a career turning corporate arrogance into consent decrees. To our neighbors, she was just the quiet mom with the black SUV. To me, she was the most dangerous kind of calm. We bought our house in Willow Ridge because we thought it was normal. HOA bylaws looked like wallpaper, dense but harmless. Serena read every page before we signed, marked the inspection clauses, the complaint procedures, the fine schedules. I didn't even look. "We'll never need this," I said. She smiled and said nothing. For a while it was fine. Block parties, school runs, the illusion of safety. But she kept a folder on her laptop labeled Willow Ridge HOA. It started empty. She knew it wouldn't stay that way. She'd already seen HOA Karen in action at meetings. Dana Whitfield, mid-40s, flawless hair, the kind of sunglasses that double as a weapon, president of everything she touches. She talks about community standards, like she invented them. Smiles while she cuts you out. She fines veterans for flagpoles an inch too wide, mothers for sidewalk chalk, elderly neighbors for unpainted shutters. And every time a contractor gets a fat, emergency bid, it just happens to lead back to her cousin's company. She's not just a petty tyrant. She's built a system that launders power through rules and donations. The plaque in the principal's office with the Whitfield name 8 inches from his head isn't decoration. It's leverage. Serena saw it all and stayed quiet. "Documentation first," she told me. She never came home from a meeting without a photo of the agenda, a screenshot of the budget, a copy of the email chain. She wasn't planning to fight. She was preparing in case we ever had to. That's the federal habit. Chain of custody, authentication, timestamps. People think a paper trail is boring. In the right hands, it's a weapon. That's why the day of the bat didn't surprise her. It activated her. She moved the way she did in the sandbox. No wasted effort. Eyes on the threat. Protect the casualty. Secure the scene. When she knelt over June, she wasn't just checking for concussion. She was logging injuries in her head, building evidence before the ambulance even arrived. When she stared at Chase, she wasn't just a mom. She was a witness under oath. When she looked at HOA Karen, she wasn't intimidated by the SUV or the sunglasses. She was already mentally drafting the complaint. I watched it happen, and something inside me shifted. Up to then, I'd been the passive one. Mow the lawn, pay the fine, grumble at dinner. Now I started to see the war Serena had been quietly mapping. Every letter from the HOA, every whispered story from a neighbor, every kickback hidden in a budget line. It wasn't just petty. It was a pattern. And patterns can be broken. We weren't alone. Hank Carter across the street, retired Marine with hands like vices and a heart like a church bell, had his own file of bogus fines. Emily Parker, 5th grade teacher, organizer of the block party, allergic to drama but pale at the mention of HOA Karen, had stories of parents iced out and arts programs starved while athletics thrived. Even Alan Brooks, the treasurer who sat next to Dana every month reading numbers like they weren't stolen, looked like a man who wanted to apologize for being in the room. Serena didn't push them yet. She just listened, collected, built a map of who was tired and who was ready. That's the thing about authority. It's not about yelling louder. It's about being the calmest person in the room when everyone else is bluffing. Serena had spent years in places where bluffing gets people killed. Now she was in a neighborhood where bluffing just gets people fined, and she had the patience to let HOA Karen keep bluffing until the day it counted. The bat was that day. So while HOA Karen strutted and Chase bragged in group chats about, "My mom owns the principal," and "We're making their life hell with the HOA," Serena was already pivoting. Urgent care photos, time-stamped letters, recorded phone calls, hidden cameras disguised as birdhouses, a dash cam aimed at the Whitfield's driveway, a drone orbiting the commons at dawn. She turned our porch into a forward operating base. We weren't collecting gossip. We were collecting proof. And she did it all without noise. No Facebook rants, no shouting at meetings, just receipts, just patience. Just the quiet confidence of someone who knows that when you pull the pin on evidence at the right moment, arrogance implodes on contact. Watching her work was like watching a sniper line up a shot nobody else can see. The neighbors saw a quiet mom walking her kid to school. I saw a decorated veteran laying out a battlefield. That's why when people ask me now, "Weren't you scared?" I tell them the truth. The only scared people that day were the ones holding the bat. They just didn't know it yet. They didn't know that Serena had already mapped their power structure, documented their violations, and lined up allies who would stand when she needed them. They didn't know that a paper trail built by a medic can be as deadly as any weapon. And they didn't know that the next time they saw her, she wouldn't be walking across gravel. She'd be standing at a podium with the whole neighborhood watching, and the law standing right behind her. You don't survive long under petty power without learning its architecture. After the bat incident, while Serena built the evidence wall, I started seeing the HOA not as a homeowners club but as a small-town syndicate with bylaws for muscle. And at the center of it sat Dana Whitfield. Everyone else called her Dana, but to me she had already become HOA Karen, the woman who could fine a veteran for a flagpole while cutting a check to the school for a new scoreboard with her name etched in bronze. She wasn't just president of Willow Ridge Estates HOA, she was the PTA vice chair, the Community Standards Committee, the host of the annual gala, the donor whose family plaque hung in Principal Alvarez's office like a warning label. Mid-40s, ice blonde hair, nails like glass. She talked about keeping values high, but drove an SUV that looked like it came with its own airspace. She smiled at you like a friend while rearranging the rules behind your back. She didn't enforce covenants. She weaponized them. The pattern was there for anyone who wanted to see. Emergency assessments that just happened to coincide with stonework at HOA Karen's house. Landscaping contracts awarded to her brother-in-law's shell company. Compliance inspections scheduled at night, in violation of the very covenant she cited to others. Fines for hoses coiled wrong, for ceramic gnomes painted by children, for grass a quarter-inch too high. Selective enforcement. The board's allies left alone, the rest bled slowly with paper cuts until they moved out. and every one of those stories carried a face. Hank Carter fined 200 for flying a flag an inch too wide. A single mother written up for sidewalk chalk, defacing common property. An elderly neighbor ordered to remove a wheelchair ramp for aesthetic violation. When they appealed, the board met behind closed doors, denied the appeal, and added a late fee. I'd sat through enough meetings to see how it worked. HOA Karen would lean back, smile, and let her treasurer Alan Brooks read the numbers like they weren't stolen, while the rest of the board nodded like a choir. Serena never called it out in public. She just logged it. Each fine, each photo, each whisper from a neighbor who didn't want their name used. She knew a system this tight didn't collapse from outrage. It collapses from exposure. But to expose it, you have to understand its wiring. Who benefits, who's scared, who's ready to flip. The Whitfield network ran through the school as well. Athletics got donations. The arts begged for paint. Varsity boys strutted like little princes because they saw how power moved around them. The principal's budget had anonymous gifts with Whitfield fingerprints all over them. Every ribbon cutting, every sponsorship plaque, another string tied to someone's wrist. Even the compliance team, who showed up at our house at 11:06 p.m., wore jackets from a company that had been handed a fat landscaping contract thanks to HOA Karen's vote. It was like living under a private government. Bylaws instead of statutes, fines instead of taxes, compliance crews instead of cops. And at the top, a president who thought she was untouchable because she'd built the board to protect herself. That was the structure we were up against. That's why Serena didn't just yell about her kid being hurt. She built a case like a prosecutor. And that's why I didn't sleep after seeing the dugout screenshots of Chase bragging, "My mom owns the principal. She's making their life hell with the HOA." Because those weren't just teenage words. They were a blueprint of how his mother actually ran the neighborhood. We had open loops now, and the audience could feel them. What happens when you confront someone who's written the rules for herself? What happens when you pry up the floorboards of a petty kingdom and show what's underneath? Serena had already begun the answer. She'd built a quiet alliance. Hank with his Marine spine, Emily with her teacher's memory, Alan with his treasurer's remorse, me with my newfound resolve. The structure that had felt like stone started to look like paper waiting for a match. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, the folder between us, and Serena tracing the network on a legal pad. Arrows from HOA Karen to the landscaping shell, to the donations, to the principal, to the fines. "They think they're a board," she said quietly. "They're a racket, and rackets end when someone shows the books." She slid the pad to me. "This isn't about yelling louder, it's about being undeniable." That's when I understood the stakes were bigger than June's scrape. This wasn't just about our daughter. It was about every neighbor who'd been told to stay small, about a system that taught kids like Chase that they could terrorize an 8-year-old and walk away laughing because mom owned the adults, and about showing, live, what happens when that system runs into someone trained to hold a line under fire. Serena closed the folder and said, "Next step, evidence." Her voice was flat, but I could hear the click of a plan locking into place. The kind of click you hear right before a hammer falls. HOA. Karen thought she had us boxed in. She had no idea we were already mapping the walls. People talk about paperwork, like it's a chore. In the right hands, it's artillery. After the dugout screenshots dropped, Serena stopped being a quiet observer and became an operator. She turned our house into a forward operating base and our HOA file into a case file. While the neighborhood slept, she built a fence you couldn't see, but everyone would feel. First, she moved on medical documentation. Urgent care photos, concussion protocols, doctor's notes, all signed, time-stamped, sealed. She scanned every page into an encrypted drive, chain of custody intact. She filed a police report listing Chase and his 3 varsity friends as involved parties, even before Principal Alvarez investigated. She wasn't looking for an apology. She was laying foundation for prosecution. Then she attacked the HOA from its own bylaws. Willow Ridge Estates Covenant 2.3d, inspections only during daylight hours with prior written notice. She printed the clause, highlighted it, tacked it above the kitchen desk. Every nighttime visit from the compliance crew would now be a violation on record. She installed hidden cameras, one disguised as a birdhouse in the yard, one peeking from a holly bush, one pinhole high in the garage beam with a perfect view of the street. She hardwired a dash cam into her sedan, angled straight at the Whitfield driveway. At dawn, she launched a drone, public spaces only, no backyards, slow orbit at 400 feet, mapping who came and went, which inspectors visited, which houses, how long the landscaping crew actually stayed versus what the budget billed. She didn't just record video, she logged metadata, timestamps, GPS coordinates, names of contractors, license plates. Every violation cross-referenced to the covenant section it broke. She was building not a scrapbook, but a prosecution package. Watching her work was like watching a bomb tech strip wires. Steady hands, no wasted movement, one wrong cut, and the whole thing blows. Except here, the explosion would be legal. She looped in allies carefully. Hank Carter became eyes on the street, noting when compliance cars arrived and left. Emily Parker became the radio, feeding whispers from parents, forwarding copies of flyers showing HOA Karen's donations to the athletics program. Alan Brooks, once the treasurer who read numbers like they weren't stolen, now a man with a flash drive of the real ledger. Serena didn't push him. She laid out the stakes like a medic explaining a wound. "Your kid made a bad choice," she told him softly. "But the person orchestrating this isn't an 8th grader. Help us stop her, and we won't hunt your family for sport." Alan left the room, came back with a thin black laptop and a flash drive. "This is everything," he whispered. "Kickbacks, sham bids, charges to the HOA card for spa days, and a Caribbean trip coded as board development. 5 years, 6 figures. I kept a personal copy. If I'm going down, it's for telling the truth." Serena spent a day lost in numbers, came back with a map. Money for a community garden revitalization that existed only in minutes. Payments to a paving company owned by HOA Karen's cousin for emergency resurfacing that never happened. She built a timeline. June's injury, HOA fines, compliance crew planting evidence, Chase's brag in the dugout, donations to the school, fake bids, Alan's ledger. She wasn't just collecting dots, she was drawing lines. She called an old contact who works white-collar crime for the state. She didn't sell a story. She sent a file encrypted and said, "Read it." By afternoon, a judge signed papers we never thought we'd see in a neighborhood where the biggest argument used to be mailbox height. It wasn't a raid. It was a slow tightening of a legal noose. And all the while, HOA Karen kept smiling at meetings, thinking she owned the board and the principal and the narrative. That was the power of technical discovery. Most people think retaliation means shouting, lawsuits, a Facebook post. Serena's version was chain of custody, statutory citations, and a dossier that could walk itself into a courtroom. Watching her work gave me a kind of cold hope. This wasn't just about our daughter's scraped cheek anymore. This was about everyone who'd been told to stay small while someone else rearranged the rules. And as the folder on her laptop grew, so did the open loop for the audience. You could feel it in the neighborhood. People started to whisper, to knock on our door, to hand us their own fines, their own photos. We weren't just building a case, we were building a coalition. The structure that had felt like stone now felt like paper soaked in gasoline. All Serena had to do was light the match. The match would be the HOA meeting. She built her presentation like a battle plan. Slide 1. June's scraped face. Slide 2. Phony violations with our time-stamped rebuttals. Slide 3. Chase's confession blown up so the room would have to look at the way arrogance spells itself. Slide 4. The money trail from dues to the cousin's company to a consulting fee landing in HOA Karen's personal account 2 days later. She rehearsed it like testimony. Calm, precise, undeniable. Meanwhile, our cameras caught the compliance van again. Different crew, same shell company. Serena smiled. "They're predictable," she said. "We're ready." She uploaded the footage to 3 secure drives, sent copies to Hank and Emily, left one on a cloud server with timed release. If anything happened to us, the story would still go live. That's the kind of planning you learn in a war zone. She also prepared for the pushback. She had drafted civil battery and defamation suits ready to file electronically the moment the meeting ended. She had EEOC and state AG referral forms pre-filled. She had a press contact primed with an embargoed statement. And she had Microsoft-style breach notice language ready to send to every contractor and donor tied to HOA Karen's network. Pending investigation into discriminatory conduct, our agreements are suspended. It was a kill chain for a petty tyrant's empire, built with receipts and patience. From the outside, it looked like nothing was happening. We still mowed the lawn. June still rode her bike. But inside our house, there was a low hum of inevitability. Serena's calm was a countdown. And Chase, bragging in the dugout about how his mom owned the principal and was making that family's life hell, had no idea he was writing his own affidavit. What happens when a spoiled kid with a bat and a mother with a plaque run into a soldier with a file? That's the question the audience is waiting to see answered. Serena was about to show them. The night of the HOA meeting would be standing room only, and by the time it was over, nobody in Willow Ridge would ever look at HOA Karen the same way again. By the time the night of the meeting arrived, our quiet house had turned into a launch pad. Every photo, every clip, every line from Alan's ledger sat in Serena's laptop, like ordnance waiting for a target. Outside, Willow Ridge looked normal. Porch lights glowing, sprinklers hissing, kids biking under street lamps. Inside, you could feel the current. Serena wasn't pacing. She was still, eyes on her screen, hands steady on the trackpad. Combat calm. Countdown calm. I'd seen that stillness before, right before a helicopter lifted off. Word had leaked. People who'd been fined for wind chimes or toddler chalk showed up early, folding chairs under their arms. The community center parking lot filled until cars spilled onto the grass. Even Hank Carter wore a pressed shirt. Emily carried a stack of printed screenshots in case the projector failed. Alan arrived alone, pale but upright, a flash drive in his pocket like a confession. I walked in behind Serena and felt the temperature drop. HOA Karen sat at the head table glowing with confidence, mid-40s, hair like glass, nails sharp enough to draw blood. Her SUV gleamed outside. She opened the meeting with the same script she always used. Smile, welcome, talk about community standards. Her treasurer read numbers like they weren't stolen. The board nodded like a choir. The plaque with her family name hung behind her like a crown. She thought this would be another routine night of control. She didn't know the floor under her had already been cut. Serena sat halfway back. She didn't rush the microphone. She let HOA Karen sail through the agenda. Landscaping updates, budget items, a new safety ordinance about porch decor. You could feel the audience shifting, murmurs rippling under the fluorescent hum. People weren't here for porch decor. They were here for blood they didn't yet know they were allowed to ask for. When the floor opened for homeowner comments, Serena stood. Calm. Straight, her voice carried without a tremor. For weeks, she began, my family has been harassed by this board's president. Click. June's scraped face filled the projector screen. The room gasped in one voice. Click. The night the compliance crew tried to plant something by our planter, captured from 3 angles. Click. Chase's text. My mom owns the principal. She's making that family's life hell with the HOA. Click. The line of money from our dues to the cousin's company to a consulting fee landing in HOA Karen's personal account 2 days later. Each slide like a hammer strike. Each gasp in the room another nail in a coffin. Before we move forward, Serena said, eyes sweeping the room like a drill sergeant scanning a formation. Comment down from where you're watching right now. She wasn't talking to the room. She was talking to the live stream. Emily had set up a phone on a tripod, streaming the meeting to a private group that had already been shared hundreds of times. Phones lit up. Comments poured in from other HOAs, other states, other countries. I'm in Texas, watching live. Ohio here, same story. London calling, can't believe this. The audience wasn't just the room anymore. It was the internet. The trap had a spotlight. HOA Karen grabbed the gavel and banged like she could crack reality back into shape. This is slander, she snapped. This meeting is adjourned. Her smile had slipped. Her nails dug into the table. The treasurer looked down at his hands. The board members shifted like chairs about to break. Serena didn't raise her voice. She clicked to the next slide. A sworn statement from Alan, notarized, detailing kickbacks and sham bids. Then the police report listing Chase and his 3 friends as involved parties in the assault on an 8-year-old. Then the covenant clause about daylight inspections. Then a time-stamped photo of the compliance crew at 11:06 p.m. by our porch. I could feel the shift in the room like a storm front. People who'd been quiet for years started whispering louder. Someone muttered, "Finally?" Someone else whispered, "Call the cops." Hank Carter folded his arms like a man at parade rest. Emily smiled without joy. Alan stared at the table, his face a mixture of shame and relief. The live stream count spiked, comments scrolling faster than anyone could read. This wasn't just a neighborhood meeting anymore. This was a trial. HOA Karen tried one more bluff. This is all a misunderstanding, she said, voice pitched high. Boys will be boys. Numbers get misentered. Inspections are for safety. She trailed off because nobody was nodding anymore. The authority she'd built from plaques and donations and fines was evaporating under fluorescent light. Serena stepped closer to the table, voice steady as a metronome. You have used this board to enrich yourself and terrorize your neighbors. You allowed your son to assault a child and then weaponized the HOA against her family. Tonight the facts are on record. Tonight the facts walk out of this room if anything happens to us. That's when the door opened. 2 state troopers and a detective in a suit walked down the aisle like patients in shoe leather. The detective's voice was calm and polite, as a Sunday. Dana Whitfield, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Someone in the crowd dropped their coffee. Somebody else whispered, finally. Chase stood like he might do something heroic and ran into a trooper who didn't move. Chase Whitfield, the detective said without looking at him. We have a warrant for assault. Hands behind your back. That metal ratchet sound, the one handcuffs make when they decide for you, clicked through the room. Phones rose like weapons, capturing every second. HOA Karen looked at Serena when they turned her toward the door. For the first time, her face didn't say, I own this place. It said, I'm in it like everyone else. The livestream count passed 100,000. Comments poured in. This is justice. Same thing happened to us. This mom is a hero. The principal's plaque with the Whitfield name behind the head table looked suddenly like a relic from a lost empire. That was the confrontation escalation. It wasn't a fistfight. It was the moment arrogance met evidence. The moment a petty kingdom built on bylaws and donations crumbled under the weight of receipts. The moment a spoiled son and his powerful mother realized they weren't above the people they'd been bleeding. And it wasn't over yet. Serena had built more than a takedown. She had built a template. The next act would show what happens when you go beyond exposure to dismantling the system itself. When the troopers walked Dana out, the room didn't erupt in applause. It exhaled. Years of fines, whispers, and selective enforcement bled out of people's faces in one long breath. But Serena didn't stop at the arrest. She knew a single night, even with handcuffs, doesn't topple a system built over years. You don't win a war by taking one hill. You keep moving until the network is dismantled. That's why she'd spent the last month building not just a case, but a kill chain. While the troopers loaded Dana and Chase into separate cars, Serena opened her laptop at the back of the room and hit send. One encrypted file went to the state AG's office, White-Collar Crime Division. One went to the IRS Criminal Investigations Unit with a cover letter citing 26 U.S.C. paragraph 7201 and paragraph 7206 for tax evasion and false statements. Another went to the State Licensing Board for Contractors, naming the shell company that had been billing 3 hours for 15 minutes of landscaping. She even had a pre-drafted civil RICO complaint ready to file in district court on behalf of aggrieved homeowners of Willow Ridge Estates. She didn't shout about any of it. She closed the laptop and walked out under the fluorescent lights like it was just another Tuesday. The livestream audience kept climbing, people in Texas, Ohio, London typing, "watching right now," and "this is how you do it." We walked to our SUV with Hank and Emily behind us like an honor guard. Inside, Serena's calm cracked just enough for her to squeeze my hand. "One down," she said quietly. "Now we finish it." The finish looked nothing like drama. It looked like letters on letterhead. Within 48 hours, the state froze the HOA's bank account under a preliminary injunction. The IRS sent a notice of inquiry to Dana's cousin's company. The licensing board suspended their contractor license pending investigation. The principal received a subpoena for donation records. The board's insurance carrier got a demand letter pointing out that their policy did not cover intentional fraud. Without funds and without cover, the board resigned en masse. At the same time, Serena filed civil battery and defamation suits on behalf of June. She didn't go after Chase's college fund. She went after Dana's personal liability and the HOA's directors and officers coverage. She cited precedent from Smith v. Green Acres HOA, 2018, showing boards can be held vicariously liable for the intentional torts of their officers when committed under color of authority. She added a count for discriminatory enforcement under the state's Fair Housing Act. Every paragraph tight, every citation numbered. It wasn't a Facebook rant. It was a legal spear. The effect was immediate. Reporters started calling. Not the local lifestyle blog, the Metro Daily, the regional TV station, even a podcast about neighborhood corruption. Emily managed the inbound, forwarding only the ones Serena approved. Hank stood in front of cameras as a retired Marine saying, "We just want fair rules." Alan gave a statement through his attorney, admitting the ledger and promising to cooperate. By the end of the week, Dana's mugshot was public, and Chase's name had been redacted from the juvenile docket, but everyone knew. Inside Willow Ridge, the compliance vans stopped coming. The bogus fines stopped. The intimidation stopped. But Serena kept the cameras rolling. "You don't dismantle a racket by turning off the lights," she told me. "You dismantle it by showing everyone where the wires run." She held a Saturday workshop in our garage for neighbors. how to request HOA records under state law, and handed out templates for open records requests. She explained paragraph 72303 of the state statutes on homeowner access to association records. She showed them how to demand an accounting and how to call a special meeting under the bylaws. People who'd been passive for years started taking notes. Meanwhile, the civil case moved forward. Dana's attorneys tried to settle quietly. Serena refused. She wanted a consent decree requiring a full forensic audit, restitution of all misused funds, and the appointment of an independent receiver until new elections. She wanted a public apology to June and every homeowner fined under bogus charges. And she wanted a permanent injunction barring Dana from serving on any homeowners board in the state for 10 years. Her tone in negotiations was the same as it had been on the gravel. Flat, cold, professional. "You built this board to protect yourself," she told the mediator. "Now it's going to protect the people you hurt." The judge signed off on most of it. The audit confirmed everything Alan had handed over. 5 years of kickbacks, sham bids, personal expenses coded as community development. The receiver mailed refund checks to homeowners. The new board adopted Serena's transparency amendments to the bylaws, requiring published budgets, open meetings, and a rotating compliance committee chosen by lottery. Dana sold her house in 2 weeks and vanished into rumor like smoke. Chase was ordered into community service at the very Little League fields where June once played. Every Saturday, he lined up bases and handed out bats under the eyes of coaches who knew the story. To the outside world, it looked like a clean ending. To the livestream audience, it was a lesson. Comments poured in. "Doing this in our HOA? Where do I start? This mom is my hero." Serena never answered them. She wasn't interested in being a hero. She was interested in getting our Tuesdays back. But she had done something bigger than our yard. She had shown how patience backed by receipts can be louder than a bullhorn. She had held up a second mirror to power. I watched her take down the cameras one by one, leaving only the doorbell. "Good fences make good neighbors," she said, and for once it didn't sound like a warning. June rode her bike past the gravel lane without looking over her shoulder. Hank agreed to be interim president with a sigh, like a man who thought he'd retired from nonsense. Emily took minutes like she was writing a new constitution. Alan stayed on to untangle the accounts and return what could be returned. And me? I mowed the lawn to exactly 2.9 inches and sent the invoice to the board for your records. Hank called 10 minutes later, laughing so hard he wheezed. "Petty," he said, "and absolutely perfect." People ask if we won. We got our house back. We got our Tuesdays back. We learned that getting loud isn't the same as getting even. We learned that a medic with a file can bring down a petty empire. And if you're watching this and thinking of your own HOA war story, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you'd have done differently. Because somewhere out there, another HOA Karen is smiling behind sunglasses thinking she owns the rules. She hasn't met someone like Serena yet. But she will. When the dust settled, Willow Ridge didn't look like the same neighborhood. It was quieter, but not the nervous quiet that used to follow a letter from the HOA. This was a good quiet, the sound of people no longer afraid to plant a flower or hang a flag. June laughed again on the gravel lane, her bike tires crunching over the stones like nothing had ever happened. Serena stored most of the cameras in a tub in the garage, but left the doorbell one. "Good fences make good neighbors," she said, and for the first time it sounded like a promise. The new board met for the first time in the community center. No plaques, no SUV gleaming outside, no gavel banging to shut people up. Hank Carter sat at the head of the table because someone had to. Emily took minutes like she was writing a new constitution. Alan sat 2 seats down, pale but steady, working through the accounts to return what could be returned. People who'd been fined for wind chimes or toddler chalk spoke without looking over their shoulders. The bylaws Serena had written were on the agenda. Published budgets, open meetings, a rotating compliance committee chosen by lottery. The rules were still rules, but they weren't weapons anymore. Dana Whitfield, HOA Karen, was gone. She'd sold her house in 2 weeks and vanished into rumor like smoke. Her mugshot had been splashed across the Metro News. Her name had become shorthand online for a certain kind of petty tyranny. Chase was doing community service at the very little league fields where June once played, lining up bases and handing out bats under the eyes of coaches who knew the story. Every Saturday morning he stood there in a neon vest while parents whispered. Maybe that was punishment. Maybe it was practice at being a person. Either way, the plaque with his family name had been taken down from the principal's office. In its place hung a new sign. All children welcome here. The civil suit ended with a consent decree. The audit confirmed everything Allen had handed over: 5 years of kickbacks, sham bids, personal expenses coded as community development. Refund checks went out to homeowners. A permanent injunction barred Dana from serving on any homeowners board in the state for 10 years. The new board adopted Serena's transparency amendments. The state AG's office filed its own charges. The IRS opened an investigation into unpaid taxes on the kickbacks. The contractor license for the Cousins Landscaping Company was revoked. The network that had once felt like stone turned out to be paper all along. We didn't throw a party. Serena didn't want a parade. She wanted our Tuesdays back. But when the first refund check arrived, all the bogus fines added up. She smiled a small, tired smile. It wasn't a fortune, but it was an apology you could take to the bank. I used it to hire the most absurdly precise lawn service in the county for one day. They showed up with lasers, literally, and mowed our yard to a crisp, uniform 2.9 inches. I took a photo and emailed the invoice to the board with the subject line, "For your records." Hank called 10 minutes later, laughing so hard he wheezed. "Petty," he said, "and absolutely perfect." People ask me if we won. I tell them we didn't just win, we learned. We learned that getting loud isn't the same as getting even. We learned that patience backed by receipts can be louder than a bullhorn. We learned that a medic with a file can bring down a petty empire. We learned that power is a mirror that only shows you your good side, unless somebody holds up a second mirror. Serena held one up, and the reflection ended a dynasty built on fines and intimidation. Sometimes I think about Dana, not with glee but with curiosity. People like her don't start as villains. They start as helpful. Then they notice doors open when they say certain things. One day they forget the doors aren't theirs. Power is addictive because it feels like virtue. But when you've built your power on paper rules, one paper trail can undo you. Serena proved that. She showed our daughter and our neighbors that rules can be shields instead of swords. That standing firm when silence would be easier can be stronger than shouting. And she showed a live stream audience of strangers in Texas, Ohio, London, watching right now, exactly how to do it. If you've made it this far with me, you know this isn't just a story about one spoiled kid with a bat. It's a story about a system that taught him he could. And it's a story about what happens when that system runs into someone trained to hold a line under fire. Somewhere out there, another HOA Karen is smiling behind sunglasses, thinking she owns the rules. She hasn't met someone like Serena yet. But she will. Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching right now. Tell me if you've seen this in your neighborhood. Tell me what you'd have done differently. Do HOAs help communities or just give petty people a badge? Drop your take. Argue it out. Because the only way petty power survives is in the dark. Hold up a mirror. Watch what happens. That's our victory. Not just getting our yard back. Not just getting our Tuesdays back, but showing anyone who's ever been told they don't belong that the rules can work for them too, that respect can't be bought, and arrogance can't survive exposure. And if you're listening from another state, another country, another HOA war zone, know this: you're not alone. Documentation is artillery. Patience is a trigger. And when the time comes, you can make a petty empire collapse under the weight of its own paper.